Hey y'all, welcome back to the Tres Cuervos workshop. It is a Saturday morning and I am going to spend some time fulfilling a wholesale order that came through Fair. Fair, if you haven't heard of it, is an online wholesale marketplace. I use it both to buy some products for my shop in Albuquerque, and I sell my products to retailers using the same platform. It has been very beneficial to my business. It's very much turnkey, and it allows you to they manage the billing for you and pay out when you ship if you choose that, and then also help you manage shipping and reporting. It's fairly comprehensive and I'm happy with it. This order consists of about 20 bracelets and some wallets. And I'm going to show you how I make wallets and fulfill a wholesale order. I'm grabbing the leather that I'm going to use to cut and sew the wallets. They're called the Chimayo wallet on the website. This is a little closet where I keep all of my hides out of the way and all together. I'm going to be using this Horween 2 to 3 ounce horse hide. Move back to the table with my hide. This is, as I said, Horween horse hide, 2 to 3 ounce. I buy this from Maverick Leather Company in Bend, Oregon. I've been buying leather from them for a really long time. They're great for if you want one hide. There are a few kinds of hides that they don't have consistently. So if you want to experiment with something or try something a little different, they're great because the prices are great. They sell overruns and extras and hides that aren't the first quality. So because I make very small things, I can cut around blemishes or holes or anything like that. But there are a few hides they consistently have. And this is one of them. I think it might be called Wrangler. It could be wrong. But it's 2 to 3 ounce Horween horse hide. And this is this really nice cognac color. They might call it Italian brown or tan. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that all of the places where I'm going to cut the wallets out are free of blemishes and holes. And I will use blank that I've already cut and awl, like a scratch awl maybe. I bought this from Tandy 15 years ago or so. And I will scratch out the outline of this wallet so that I'm not wasting it and so that it's also manageable on my clicker press. So I'm going to sew up 6 wallets today, which means I will probably cut out 8 because I want to make sure that I can give him the best 6 that I can. So I will cut them, sew them, stamp them with my logo, sew them, and then decide which of the 6 best. See if I can make the other 2 work for selling at the retail shop or putting them on sale. Or if they're all good, then obviously 2 of them will go to the store. Scratching these out with this template and then cutting them out, and then I will go over to the clicker press and I will show you how I cut them out. Before I do that though, I wanted to show you how I will cut these squares out of the leather. This is a rotary cutter. If I have a long straight cut, I use that. It's a Fiskars rotary cutter. And then for irregular cuts, I've got my trusty Exceed Designs Tyrant. It's a utility knife where you can change out the blades so they're always sharp. And I will use this to cut along the lines I scratched out because these are not long straight cuts. And there's the first piece. All right, I'm done cutting these pieces out so they're easy to manage using this template. This will go back in the closet, and I don't like to waste anything. These pieces of leather that aren't big enough for wallets, these are some of the things I cut around. So that's a natural hole. There's some scars on there that are pretty deep that I don't want to be part of the wallet. These will turn into the tags that I use on my bracelets to indicate what their sizes are. So we'll go over to the clicker press now. All right, so I moved over to the bench that has the clicker press on it. This is a manual 3-ton, 4-ton clicker press. It's called a Mighty Wonder by Weaver Leather. A lot of folks who do leather work buy one of these. I've had it for about 10 years. And I use it to use cutting dies and also sometimes to press impressions into leather. I had Texas Custom Dies make me an exact stamp. It really helps with consistency. This is a clicker die. They both do steel rule, and then they do full metal style dies. As you can see, it has the sew holes in it as well. All y'all leather workers, I know you do this differently, probably, and you might think this is a dumb way to do it. I like to do this upside down, so I know exactly where I'm placing the leather, so that I'm making sure that the most consistent part of the leather is at the top of the wallet. I'll just use a cheap, basic plastic cutting board and get to pressing. And since it's not quite big enough to do it in one go, I'll flip it around. And as you can see, it cuts it out like a cookie. So that's the first one. All right, so now that these are cut out, again, I don't like wasting the leather. When you cut out the wallet, it leaves this little piece of scrap. I will put a hole in that and a Sam Brown button, and I will make little cord tacos out of them and sell them at the store. I know, clever, right? All right, so now I have cut this Delrin stamp with my logo on it using the X-Tool laser I've got. And I have a template that will show me where to place the stamp. You put a piece of leather underneath it so that it helps with the impression. I'm gonna put this upside down, line up my little guide, put my stamp in the appropriate spot, and put the impression in. So now my logo is in the wallet, and this is ready to sew. So I use that Mighty Wonder to cut out wallets and stamp them. I also have a Cowboy 12-ton hydraulic press. While I could use this to cut out the wallets and stamp them, I prefer not to. I prefer to use this to cut out keychains, thicker leather, and then stamp keychains because it requires a deeper emboss. That's why I stick to the Mighty Wonder when it comes to wallets and stamping wallets and thinner leather. All right, back at the bench. I'm ready to start sewing. I have my wallets here, pair of scissors from Tandy. They work fine. A handful of needles, which you can buy a whole mess of these real cheap at Tandy Leather. A lighter. And this is Ritza Tiger thread. It's poly thread. It's really great. It melts nicely when you're done with the sewing anything really. I'll show you. This is what the spool that I will be using looks like. I'm not exactly positive. I didn't see it happen, but I am suspicious as to how this became this. All right, so the rule of thumb that I use is you want to have 3 times the length of the course that you plan to sew in thread to make sure that you've got enough. I will measure this 3 times the length and cut it out. And since this is a tri-fold wallet, you can just go a little bit longer than the length of it because that will fold over 3 times. All right, now that I've got these cut to length, I am going to thread these needles. I am saddle stitching, which is a very strong stitch that I don't think you can do with a machine. As far as I know, you can't, but technology is always advancing. But as far as I know, this is only something you can do by hand. If there was a machine that did it, I couldn't afford it anyway, and I don't have a use case. So the way to thread these needles is you go through the eyelet, and then you take the end of it, and then you pierce through the center of the thread with the needle, and then you lock it down. And what I like to do is mount the end of it with the lighter so that it doesn't come undone while you're sewing. I don't feel like showing you how to saddle stitch. There's a million places where you can learn that. It's very simple. There's some sort of little tricks that I can show as I go. While I'm rambling, I'll mention it if I think about it. But the upshot is that it's great for sewing leather, wallets, saddles, because if it breaks in any spot, it does not just completely unravel the entire stitch. You can repair it if it's saddle stitched. And if it's lock stitched, like you would have on a normal machine, that is a more difficult repair and likely a complete failure in that line of stitching. So I'm going to thread all these up so that I can just, however many needles I've got, so I can go sew them as a little more efficiently. So I got this stack of wallets. I think I ended up doing 10 or 8. I did 8. And, if it looks like the oil and the wax and the leather isn't completely, isn't even or is bloomed or is acting a little funny, I'll use a heat gun. Use a heat gun from Harbor Freight. And I'll just run it over the leather to loosen up some of the oil and wax, and it tends to even it out. And if you wipe it with a clean cloth, it'll gloss it up a little bit. I will take this wallet and I will fold it into thirds and line up these holes. And I will take one of my threads and I will go to the second set of holes down from the top and even out my thread by pulling it. And I'll go up one hole and I will feed it through, and then I'll make sure that those are even again. So I'm actually going back down again and doubling up the top 2 holes. You will notice that I do not use a stitching pony. A lot of folks do. I don't really find them that useful personally. What I do recommend though is that when you saddle stitch, you do it the same order every time. So I'm going from the inside of the wallet out, and when I go through the holes of the 3 pieces of leather, I'll pull it out and then I will hold that down and towards the top before I put the other thread through. So it keeps that stitch looking fairly uniform. And what I'll also do is I'll do 2 stitches before I tighten it up. I found that it's not really necessary to tighten it or snug it up for every stitch. So I'll just do 2 stitches and then I'll snug it up. Don't go crazy with how tight you pull it. Just make it snug, but not super tight. And regarding a stitching pony, you can use one if you want. It does help you to line up multiple pieces of leather. I also don't glue the leather together. Don't judge me, leather workers. These wallets sell, people are happy with them. I've never had anybody complain. If you're gonna judge me, I will judge you and say, I think maybe using your stitching pony and glue is theater, and you're trying to make it look a little more difficult than it actually is, because I have never had a stitch fail. I've never had one of these returned because the stitch failed. Again, I ain't judging you. Do whatever you want, do it however you want. These retail for $70, so I'm not charging an outrageous amount for it, but I'm also not putting a lot of time into elements of this process that I don't really feel are necessary for my purposes. If it's right for you and you want to do it, more power to you. But also, mind your business if you don't like it. Okay, so I've got to the bottom of this course. I'm going back up through and sewing back on itself. So there's 2 stitches on the last one, and then there's another, I go up 2 sets so that there's 2 stitches on the last 2. So it's double stitched on the top and the bottom. And then I will cut a little tail, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. You can see a little tail there. And then I will burn that thread with the lighter. Some people use the lighter to smooth out the melted thread. I just use my thumb because I've never burnt myself that way. And then if there is a little fur along the edges from the cut, I will run the lighter up the edge just to burn off the little bit of, without burning the leather itself, just to make that a little smoother. I also do not edge burnish with this one. I think this is combination tanned leather. It's not vegetable tanned. It won't take quite as slick an edge as a veg tanned leather would. But also, again, because I'm using this clicker press to cut this out, and actually, frankly, if I used a laser to cut leather out, now I wouldn't cut this leather with a laser with my X-Tool P2S because it's not vegetable tanned. I use Wickett and Craig vegetable tanned leather for the ones that I cut out with the laser, which when you cut it with a laser, it burns the edge and it makes it a really nice, even edge. So I don't burnish, I don't slick, I don't edge coat the edges of these wallets. Part of the aesthetic is rustic, but also that is a characteristic of more expensive wallets. I don't think that they're necessarily higher quality. There's just more time put into it and materials, which makes the wallets obviously more expensive. I'm keeping this at a reasonable price point, and I am dispensing with some of the things that I don't think are necessary to make this a bomb-proof wallet that will age really nicely, serve their owner well for a very, very long time. I'm gonna keep sewing these up. I'll see you when I'm done. Okay, so 8 wallets done. 6 of them will go to fulfill the order from Fair, my wholesale order, and 2 of them will go to the store. All in, took about an hour and a half to cut, sew, stamp, and QA these for 8 wallets. So they retail for $70. And they wholesale for $35. So you can do the math on that. It's definitely not passive income. It's a nice way to spend a couple hours on a Saturday morning. And I'm a big believer in active income. So it's good to work for the money that you're making. And passive income is really for people who have made enough money actively to invest it in those ways that provide it passively. Or, are fortunate enough to have been born with money from another source to spend. So let's earn some money actively. But like Bub Rub says, that's it and that's all. See you next time.